Okay, I think I'm recording now. This is me again, and today I'm going to talk about the neurotypical community and how in a lot of ways they suck. And it's going to kind of build off of the previous video in that I say rejection is the story of my life, but it's not exactly the same. I mean, that video definitely is valuable, and I encourage you to check it out if you haven't, because it makes a lot of good points and points out a lot of the crap that people like me have had to deal with, and how others have, in many cases, just honestly failed us when we need them most. And then they turn around and expect us to bend over backwards for them when they need us. And it's like double standard much. But I have to say that in a lot of ways, that's not really relevant to me, because the rejection occurs before the relationship ever gets to the point where I would consider them a good enough friend to trust them with something that I need like that. A lot of times it's occurred right out the gate. Like, you try to talk to people and they just ignore you. They make it clear that they don't want to talk to you. That's shit I've had to deal with a lot growing up. Like, when I was growing up, I live in a pretty conservative area, and a lot of them just, I feel like they felt like they were better than me. I was different. I was vulgar, and a lot of them acted like, I don't want my darling son interacting with someone like that. So they would step in and interrupt the friendship, even if their kids had no problem with me. And it happened so many times that I've just since then really stopped trying to even interact with people in my neighborhood. Yeah, so I mean, I like swear around their kids, and I mean, yeah, maybe I shouldn't swear, but it's like, it's things kids do, and they'd act like, how dare you do that? And they just step in and destroy the friendship before it ever really could get off the ground. People would just come into my life and then they'd be gone because apparently their parents didn't like me. And they never explained why, by the way. That's cowardice in their part. And I also love the hypocrisy of it too, because it's like, you act like you're all high and mighty and you have these high standards, but you have no problem excluding somebody, not even telling them why. So who the hell are you to freaking point fingers at anybody? But yeah, I had very few friends growing up, and it didn't really get much better later on. I felt a lot of the time there was always this underlying feeling of, you're not welcome, you don't belong here. I remember one time I got signed up for some youth group to supposedly make friends. It didn't work because I tried reaching out to them, and it quickly became clear it was a futile effort. I was always the last one picked for group games. You know, you think it only happens in TV. No. People would talk about me and say he's looking when I looked. They just wouldn't try to interact with me. In school, I always felt like the odd one out in a lot of the clubs I joined. I felt like I was never really accepted. I mean, they let me stay, but it's like they would have as little interaction as possible and have no shame about it. Even in college, same freaking story, especially in my last year. I may have to admit, at least the first 3 years, people were sort of cordial to me to some extent, but that freaking Met crowd in the last year can bite my shiny metal ass, in the words of Bender. They did not like me, and they made it clear to me every chance they got. I'd make jokes in the class and they wouldn't laugh. And I don't want to toot my own horn, but I literally do freaking comedy improv, and I freaking make reactions and people watch them and like them enough to where they make suggestions. Clearly, if I wasn't funny in any way, shape, or form, I don't think I could say those things without being called liar. Now, I'm not saying everything I say is funny, even when I'm trying, but you know, when you literally make jokes and 95% of the time people don't laugh, I don't think I'm that unfunny. And yet you would think so by their interaction, because they didn't want to freaking laugh. They didn't like me, and they wanted to make me know that. And you could say they didn't have a sense of humor. Well, they laughed hysterically every single time that the professor made a joke. And some of them were funny, but he also reused his material a lot. So it's like when you say, hey, there's a high pressure system overhead, so if you go outside, you'll see a giant H in the sky. It's funny the first time, but he would say it over and over again, and they'd laugh at just as hysterically. So clearly, they have a sense of humor. They just don't want to laugh at my stuff. They also had no problem shutting me out of group projects in calculus. There was a group project, and two groups basically decided we don't want this guy in our group without even bothering to tell me beforehand. The professor addressed the class and asked them, is there anyone who could take this guy on? And nobody raised their frickin' hand. So total scumbag behavior. And yeah, another building off their sense of humor. They thought it was the funniest thing ever when someone dicked me out of a project at a Price is Right thing. So basically what happened, the professor, in all of his wisdom, effed up on some project. And even though I was early, he's like, well, I messed up, so everyone's just going to have to do a Price is Right. Well, whoever gets closest to the number without going over gets to pick the project. I was nice and went low on one of them. Some guy dicked me over, and everyone laughed like it was the most funny thing they'd ever heard. Ha ha ha, dicking someone over is funny. It just kind of illustrates the idea I'm pointing out here, where they don't like me, I don't belong, and they damn well make sure they jump on any opportunity they can get to show me that. Because ganging up on people like a pathetic coward is really funny to a lot of these degenerates. I'm definitely going to make a video about about what I call pussy gang-ups, because you're being a pussy by ganging up on someone. Like, how much How much skill and freaking balls does it take to confront someone when you got your little lackey crew backing you up? None. Whatever, I'm digressing. No one fucking stood up and said, this is not acceptable, you can't treat someone that way, so passive enabling. I hate passive enabling. You know, you're basically just giving these idiots the green light to freaking keep acting this way because you're not going to freaking do anything about it. Hell, even the freaking brony fandom. I went over this before. I tried reaching out and writing a story about my experiences like that and how I felt like I didn't have any friends and reiterating the issues I had in the disabled community kind of sucks, where I feel like I try and nobody really reaches out, and that hurts me, and no one seems to get it. And I tried writing a story for this fandom thinking they've been excluded a lot, they should understand where I'm coming from. No, they flooded the story with so many dislikes that it became pain to freaking even continue writing it, because I was facing the same exclusion that I was trying to write about, to vent about and move past and get some understanding. And I tried asking, why is this happening? They never fucking told me what was going on. Just radio silence and continuing to act that way. And of course, when I stand up for myself and try to call them out, everyone jumps on me and acts like I'm the bad guy. It's like, you should have acted better, and that wouldn't have happened. But yeah, I've been rejected, shut out, and just not listened to for a lot of my life. And it's to the point where I'm kind of just freaking tired of it. Now, not all the time has it been like that. There's definitely been groups that have been civil to me, and when I acknowledge them, they don't sarcastically turn to their neighbor and say, was that the wind? But quite honestly, even that's been a problem in a lot of cases too, because I also have felt like the outsider a lot of the time. And honestly, what I'm about to tell you and how I was treated at my university is why I don't really like the meteorology community, and it's a decent part of why I don't want to get a career in med anymore. The travel and lack of available jobs definitely factors in, but community just freaking sucks. I've gone on storm chasing trips. Part of the reason I joined was to try and make friends with similar interests. And, you know, I've tried reaching out so many times on so many different trips, and it's just never gone anywhere. They act all civil when you're there, but if you're sitting in the corner and feeling left out, they're not going to reach out to you and freaking say, hey, do you need someone to talk to? And you try to talk to them outside of the group, and they don't even reply to text messages half the time. It's like you just out of sight, out of mind. It's really sad. And I've seen that happen in a lot of groups. I took a class at Second City, same thing. I felt like, you know, maybe this could be a group I could make friends with. Nope. None of them have reached out to me in the years since I took that class. It's just been a common thing where even if I'm not outright excluded, I'm not outright included either. I've always felt like the third wheel, the fourth wheel, whatever. Very rarely felt like I'm a valued part of this group and people would genuinely miss me if I wasn't part of it. And I have proof of that, because I mean, how many times have I sat in the corner and no one's really seemed to notice? No one's even seemed to care. You know, if I was a valued member of the group and I was missed, why did no one come over and say, is everything okay? Do you need someone to talk to? Just anything. You know, why did no one say that? So again, I have to say, rejection is the story of my life, like Asperger's from the Inside said. I think his name's Paul, actually. I don't know offhand. I probably should look that up, but that's what he said. Rejection is the story of my life, but in a lot of cases, it's not even so much the fact that friends have failed me when I've needed them, because I don't have any frickin' friends hardly. You can't be failed by your friends if you don't have any friends to fail you. And again, I'm not trying to downplay what he's gone through. I don't want fake friends that are only there when you don't need them and bail on you the moment you need something. And again, I'm going to add that I'm not saying that that's what he's gone through is not a problem. I've definitely had problems where people have not backed me up when I've needed them to. I definitely want to address that in another video too, but this is just pointing out the general areas and how the neurotypical community sucks, because I think, just to summarize it, a lot of them think that they're better than me and they don't really want to make the effort to understand someone who's different. And they're too judgmental in a lot of cases too. Like sometimes I walk around and I say things to myself just because like I have an active imagination and I want to talk about things that bother me. And the disabled community, as much as I knock them, I'll have to say they're not as judgmental in that way. They're not going to look at that guy and say, that guy's weird, let's exclude him. They won't have a problem with it. They don't care, which is really how everybody should be. But a lot of people freaking look at that like that guy's crazy. Or just other things I do, you know, other idiosyncratic behaviors they do. They judge me and shut me out before they even give me a chance. And that's a major problem that I've seen. I mean, you've seen the result of that. You've seen the result of that from what I've just told you. How I felt outright excluded in some cases, and even when I wasn't, I never felt like I was actually part of the group. I felt like I was the fifth wheel that they were too polite to tell to go fuck themselves. Maybe that's a bit harsh in some circumstances, but I never really felt like valued. Because again, if I was valued, how come when the freaking storm chasing trips ended, no one has made any effort to reach out to me since then? And it honestly just makes me angry how nobody seems to understand how big a problem this is or understand my side of it and acts like I'm bad for trying to cut contact with people sometimes, or not trying, or getting fed up with being treated that way. Heck, I remember on a cruise I took before this pandemic hit, literally just before, I got lucky there that we didn't get quarantined on the ship, but there was this person I met, and they would talk to some other people near me, but when I was around, half the time they just would sit there silently and I'd have to keep jump starting the conversation. And I talked about how that bothered me that I was treated that way, and everyone just downplays, like, you're not trying hard enough, and this and that, and just making excuses out the ass for why I was the one who was at fault for being treated differently. How come the person who's not trying and has an issue jump starting the conversation when it dies with me, but has no issue with other people, how come they're not in any way at fault for this? Can anyone tell me that? What's their logic behind that? Probably the same caliber logic as why you think calling all in with 7 deuce versus an open shove when you haven't invested any money is a good idea, right? That is to say, no logic at all, but you're just too stubborn to admit it. There's also the fact that when we were all in a group and talking, I half the time was sitting there feeling left out on the side, not really included in any conversation. No one freaking made any effort to include me. No one asked, are you okay? It's the same thing with the storm chasing trip, and I'm the bad guy if I bring that up and freaking mention how ridiculous that is and how that makes me feel. You know, it's always on me. I didn't try hard enough. You didn't do this, you didn't do that. The lack of understanding and empathy from the neurotypical community can be staggering sometimes. I mean, just freaking take well, I don't know if bronies are 100% neurotypical, but I definitely think some of them are neurotypical. And yet they just had no issue shutting me out when I needed someone to just listen to me and vent to. You know, and they're sitting there criticizing my story over petty crap, if they even say anything. Half the time they just dislike it and move on to send some stupid message that we don't care. Maybe the brony community was a bad example. They're particularly cold and callous. I don't like them at all. That's not to say all the members of them are bad, but as a whole, the community fucking sucks. It really does. It's so bad, it's gonna get its own movie. That's how bad it is. But it's kind of an indication of how I've just felt treated. I've always felt shut out. I've always felt excluded. I've always felt left out. I've always felt alone. And when I freaking talk up about it and say it's a problem, everyone always tries to find some way to twist it back so it's my fault. Kind of like with the disabled thing. Why didn't you try harder? Could you have done this differently? Maybe you could acknowledge that the other people can and should have tried harder at some point. Maybe you could just stop with this hard-on for always making me out to be the bad guy and they're completely fine. It does kind of play off what Asperger's from the Inside said in that movie. Rejection's a story of life. How they're always telling him, well, could you have done something differently? And they fail to acknowledge all the effort he puts in to mask himself and how everyone else is just completely fine not doing anything. You know, they can be themselves, but he has to mask themselves. And the moment he points his finger and says, now wait a minute, how come I have to change myself for you, but you don't have to change anything for me? That's not fair. He's the bad guy. You're making me uncomfortable. You get what I'm saying. The hypocrisy of that situation should not be something that everyone gets mad at you for calling out, and yet that's what it seems to happen a lot of the time. Downplaying too, they act like it's not that bad. I'm sure that you're overreacting. Yeah, you know what? No, I'm not. No, I'm fucking not, asshole. It is that bad. It really is that freaking bad. If it wasn't that bad, how come I don't have many good friends? Explain to me that fact. If it wasn't that bad, how come I've been ghosted by people who claim to be my friend so many freaking times I've lost count? If it wasn't that bad, how come that happened? It's always my fault, right? I get tired of being the only one putting in the effort. I pull back and they stop trying. That's always my fault, right? I'm just supposed to keep the relationship on life support and they can come along for the ride and shouldn't be expected to do anything. Stop enabling this freaking behavior. It's not okay. It really is that bad. And it really is not always the person's fault. I'm not saying that people with autism or Asperger's or whatever are always perfect. I mean, shit, freaking listen to the disabled community kind of sucks movie if you really want to question me on that. But I am saying that the neurotypical community needs to try a lot harder to understand and include people who are different. And people need to stop acting like it's okay when they don't do that. And stop expecting people like me to always adjust myself to what you think is okay. But the moment I step back and say, why do I need to do this? You're not doing anything for me. I'm the bad guy. I mean, hopefully you could understand how hypocritical it is that people expect me and Asperger's from the Inside and everyone else to just match themselves to their standards, but they don't have to do anything in return. How is that fair? You know, that's bull crap. And that is why, that's not the only reason, but I do think that that's a decent part of the reason why the neurotypical community kind of frickin' sucks. Yeah, I'm gonna put frickin' in the title. And if you have a problem with it, sue me. No, I'm joking, but like seriously, they do suck. I felt left out, shunned, just excluded a lot in my life, and everyone needs to stop doing that and stop acting like those who do that are not completely in the wrong, or at least not majorly in the wrong. Like they act like it's maybe 80% my fault, 20% their fault at most. It's like, no. And it is that bad. And my depression is not me just misperceiving things. So stop downplaying it. Stop acting like what I'm going through is not valid because you don't understand it. That's just rude.